Hello and welcome to the February 15th, 2026 episode of Nick's News. I am your host, Nick, brought to you by Some Budget Studios. That's right, we're putting money into this project of ours. We're live every Sunday, and I thank you all so much for tuning in or catching the replay on the Nick's News YouTube page. This is a program dedicated to bringing good news to counter all of the bad news that we are bombarded with on a daily basis, with the hope of bringing a little bit of joy back to the world. Several of our articles are pulled from sites like Industry Tap, Live Science, Positive.news, and GoodGoodGood.co, but we appreciate everything sent in by you, the Nick's Newsies. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all here with us tonight. It's going to be a fantastic episode. It might be a little bit of a short episode. We've only got 6 articles to go through tonight, but 6 really good articles that we found. But we'll get started with our news brew. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the Speedway Grand Prix is getting into its first turn with Speedway Grand Prix MMXXV Banana Cream Pie Edition. It looks to keep things moving in this race. This is a 12% ABV Imperial Stout from AleSmith Brewing Company, and it revs up with banana, vanilla, coffee, and natural flavors. This entire month, we're on the Speedway track, so check out our Instagram to stay in the race. I really loved last week's entry. I'm looking forward to this one. It is an Imperial Stout, so of course we have the Harpoon limited edition snifter. And we don't need the Balisong bottle opener, so we'll just blow the gain on the audio. Interesting. Get into the theatrics of a 5-minute pour. Same as last time, a very dark brown color with dark brown head. Little on the thinner side for an AleSmith Stout, but that's all right. We will drip ever so slowly every last drop. There really is a 5-minute pour, geez. And there we go. Every last drop. Big bubbles, yep. A lot of times, when beers try to do banana, it comes off as that really chemically runts banana flavor. That first little sip that I got off that can was not the case. It was actually good banana. That bodes well for this brew. Shoutouts. Punxsutawney Phil popped his head up a couple weeks ago to see if Fox Hen Winery is ready to open, and sure enough, they are. This tasting room reopens this upcoming Friday, February 20th. Head on out for a glass of small batch wine or cider, made with local fruit and served in a fun and inviting atmosphere. Fox Hen is located between downtown Grand Haven and Allendale, Michigan, and I will be there on Friday, probably sometime after 5 o'clock, to enjoy their reopening. So to Fox Hen Vineyards, opening up their tasting room for the 2026 season. Cheers. Wowzers. That is an awesome beer. Holy crap, that's really good. News quote. Kindness begins with the understanding that we all struggle. That comes from Dr. Charles Glassman, who's a doctor of internal medicine, an author, and the founder of the YouTube page Coach MD. Link is in the description if you want to check it out. And I really like that quote because it is a reminder that we are all in different boats on the same ocean, and we all have different amounts of stress and struggle that we can take. And we are under those different amounts, and they weigh on us no less than it does anyone else. And that's an important thing to take into account, is to know that that aspect exists and will exist. So kindness begins with the understanding that we all struggle. Thank you very much, Dr. Charles Glassman. Cheers. Bug update. Good news, everybody. Good news, everyone! Phil has been returned to Ripley's enclosure, where he will likely break out again. The little jail spider was all the way across the room on my closet door, just staring at me. I moved him back to Ripley's home without much of a fuss. Now he's back in there, probably plotting his next escape. I'm not going to do anything to that enclosure that's going to keep him in, because it's going to throw off what I've got going on in there. So he's pretty much free to come and go as his leisure. He doesn't bother Ripley. She's doing fine. Little John made short work of a darkling beetle that made the mistake of growing up in his house, so R.I.P. to that darkling beetle. The Cuddle Puddle continues to croon. They were doing a little bit of singing earlier. Sue is a beast, and I think he's finally getting a little hungry after that after that giant tomato worm that I fed him. And then I got a surprise that I wasn't expecting. A little while ago, I picked up a pack of tomato hornworms to give to Sue and some of the other bugs. Well, they were too big for the other bugs, so I gave one to Sue, and then I had 3 left. I put those 3 in Elmira's tank, since Elmira is asleep, and some of the behavior that the caterpillars were showing was behavior that they do when they're about to pupate. One of them hatched. I now have a sphinx moth that I very hastily moved to the roach tank because I'm not ready for this. I have a friggin' sphinx moth. They look like little hummingbirds. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I potentially have 2 more on the way. All's well in the bug room. Check out our Instagram on Tuesday for pictures of the sphinx moth as it was inflating its wings. I got some really good images of it. It's really cool. This is going to suck. Christian says, I had a moth hatch in my house a few weeks ago. We managed to enclose it before that and had him like a week or 2. That's really cool. I have a very tall spare tank that I could potentially whip up into a sort of enclosure for a sphinx moth or 3. I just hadn't planned on it, so I'm going to have some arts and crafts this week. All right, let's get into our broadcast, which is broken up into 4 major categories, and those categories are science and technology, health and medicine, flora and fauna, aka plants and animals, and wholesome notes, the really nice articles that we like to end on. So we are going to start off in category 1, science and technology. We got 1 article in here, and we called it Magnets, bitch! That's right, it's a Breaking Bad reference. I'll copy and paste this into the chat if y'all want to check it out. And all of our articles are in the description of our video, so if you want to take a look at them at your leisure, by all means, I highly recommend you take a look at these. Korean researchers find way to remove nanoplastics from water in 10 minutes. This was published to the Korea Herald on January 12th of 2026 by Park Han-na. Pusan National University said on Monday its researchers have developed a water treatment method that removes microplastic pollution. It removes microscopic plastic pollution in minutes by drawing the particles together with a magnetic field. offering a potential route to cleaner drinking water and wastewater systems. The team said its process eliminated more than 95% of micro and nanoplastics within 10 minutes by using plate-shaped iron oxide magnetic nanoparticles. The approach targets plastic filaments too small to be captured by conventional filtration and sedimentation, which allows them to spread through aquatic ecosystems and potentially accumulate in the human body. Led by Chung Sung-wook, the researchers replaced commonly used spherical magnetic particles with thin, plate-like ones. The geometry increases the contact area with plastic fragments and strengthens interactions between the materials. When an external magnetic field is applied, the particles cluster together, trapping additional plastics in a phenomenon the team describes as dynamic confinement. Sounds awesome. The scientists also chemically modified the particle surfaces to improve bonding with plastics and designed the system so the particles can be recovered magnetically and reused, lowering operating costs and environmental impact. So, Christian just asked, how big is a nanoplastic? Got to be smaller than a microplastic. I believe micro is 10 to the negative 6 and nano is 10 to the negative 9. If someone wants to fact check my math there, yeah, nanoplastic is even smaller still. But these nanoparticles of iron, these nanoparticle plates, are able to stick to those nanoparticles and clump it all up. This is really neat. The study showed the full pathway from nanoparticle design and scale-up synthesis to the removal mechanism itself, positioning the technology for broader use in municipal water and wastewater facilities, environmental cleanup, and industrial effluent treatment. That's really neat. Becky said, I'm very smart. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I still need somebody to fact check me on that, though. I think I'm right. I might not be. Still check what micro and nano are. Nanoplastic. Oh, here it is. Nanoplastics measuring tens to hundreds of Oh, dang it. That's not exactly what I was looking for. Nanoplastics measuring tens to hundreds of nanometers have emerged as a new environmental threat, but filter-based methods struggle to remove them, Jung said. This offers a way to clear ultrafine contaminants quickly and at high efficiency. The research was supported by Korea's National Research Foundation and the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy, and published online in the Journal of Environmental Management on December 24th. To everybody at Pusan National University working to use nanoparticles of iron and magnets to clear microplastics and nanoplastics from water in 10 minutes. Cheers. One micrometer is 1,000 nanometer. Nanometers. No, not Microsoft. I'll fact check myself. Micro is 10 to... Yep, I was right. Micro is 10 to the negative 6. Nano is 10 to the negative 9. Some tiny stuff. Oh, where'd my... There we go. All right. That's going to get us out of science and technology. We're going to move on to category 2, health and medicine. We've got one article in here as well, and it's kind of a mix of science and technology and health and medicine, but it's really cool. We called it Beethoven's Sonatina in Denim Major. I will copy and paste this to the chat if y'all want to check it out. Beethoven's Sonatina in Denim Major. This high-tech shirt enables deaf concertgoers to feel the music on their bodies. This was published to Good on January 30th of 2026 by Cameron Baker. The opera just got a whole lot more inclusive for deaf and hard of hearing audience members at the Lyric Opera of Chicago. This is thanks to a pilot program to bring the sound shirt to opera lovers, a device worn as a jacket that's equipped with 16 haptic actuators that transmit sound from the stage into pulses, vibrations, and other sensations. While the Lyric has championed accessibility measures with like performances with American Sign Language interpretation, projected subtitles, and assisted listening devices, as well as braille and large print programs, audio-described performances, and pre-performance touch tours, the sound shirt brings a newfound innovation to the performing arts. The live opera performance is captured with what is this? There it is. The live opera performance is captured with microphones, with engineers mixing the music from each section of the orchestra and the singers. The sound is then transformed into touch data, and the signal is wirelessly broadcast to the sound shirt, the Lyrics website explained. The shirt is embedded with haptic devices that then translate sound into dynamic vibrations across the wearer's torso. They might feel the strings of a violin on their arms and the beat of a drum on their back. When combined with the projected English titles or sign language interpretation, it's the most fully experiential way for someone who is deaf or hard of hearing to experience live opera, the Lyric continued. It doesn't recreate the experience of listening to music, Brad Dunn of the Lyric told the Washington Post. It's its own thing. It translates the music into a different sensory experience that can be felt by people. And what I've seen through all of the early testing that we did is that audiences who are deaf or hard of hearing have responded very viscerally to it. The Sound Shirt pilot was launched with the support of Chicago's Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, and there are currently 10 shirts available at the Lyric, with plans to invest in 5 more. Created by London-based technology design firm Cute Circuit, each shirt retails for about $1,900. They are free for patrons to use at performances at the Lyric. That, to me, is what opera is all about. Lyric's general director, Anthony Freud, told the Washington Post. This was an opportunity to have a physical relationship with the music being performed, and that gets to the very heart of opera. Beyond Lyric, Soundshirt has been integrated into a variety of live events, including sports, gaming, and even club DJ performances. What you can hear, one person in the audience of a symphony shared via sign language, I can feel. To Lyric Opera of Chicago and the company working to create the Sound Shirt so that those who are deaf or hard of hearing can experience opera in a whole new way. Cheers. That's actually going to get us out of health and medicine. We're going to move on to category 3 already. Flora and fauna, aka plants and animals. I got to slow this down maybe just a little bit. We're going to have a short episode tonight. Nothing wrong with that, though. Nothing wrong with having a short episode. Get to bed on a good time, you know, all the good stuff. We've got 2 articles in this section, and this first one we called Arbor Day Champion 10 Years Running. I will copy and paste this into the chat if y'all want to check it out. China has planted so many trees around the Taklamakan Desert that it's turned this biological void into a carbon sink. This was published to Live Science on February 11th of 2026 by Sasha Pear. Mass tree planting in China is turning one of the world's largest and driest locations, or one of the world's largest and driest deserts, into a carbon sink, meaning it absorbs more carbon from the atmosphere than it emits, new research reveals. The Taklamakan Desert, also spelled Taklamakan or Taklamakan, is slightly larger than Montana, stretching across about 130,000 square miles, or 337,000 square kilometers for folks that haven't landed people on the moon. It is encircled by high mountains which block moist air from reaching the desert for most of the year, creating extremely arid conditions that are too harsh for most plants. However, over the past decades, China has sowed a forest around the Taklamakan's edges, and a new study suggests this approach is beginning to bear fruit. We found for the first time that human-led intervention can effectively enhance carbon sequestration in even the most extreme arid landscapes, demonstrating the potential to transform a desert into a carbon sink and halt desertification. Study co-author Yuk Young, a professor of planetary science at Caltech and a senior research scientist in NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, told Live Science in an email. Over 95% of the Taklamakan Desert is covered in shifting sand, meaning it has long been considered a biological void, according to the study. The desert has been growing since the 1950s, when China underwent massive urbanization and farmland expansion. This conversion of natural land created the conditions for more sandstorms, which, in general, blow away soil and deposit sand instead, causing land degradation and desertification. In 1978, China implemented the 3 North Shelter Belt Program, a huge ecological engineering project intended to slow desertification. Also called the Great Green Wall, which we've talked about on previous episodes, the project aimed to plant billions of trees around the margins of the Taklamakan and Gobi deserts by 2050. More than 66 billion trees have been planted in northern China to date, but experts debate whether the Great Green Wall has significantly reduced the frequency of sandstorms. China finished encircling the Taklamakan Desert with vegetation in 2024, and researchers say the effort has stabilized sand dunes and grown forest cover in the country from 10% of its area in 1949 to more than 25% today. Now, scientists have found that sprawling vegetation in the Taklamakan Desert's periphery is absorbing more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than the desert is releasing, meaning the Taklamakan may be transforming into a stable carbon sink. The researchers analyzed ground observations of different vegetation cover types, as well as satellite data showing precipitation, vegetation cover, photosynthesis, and CO2 fluxes in the Taklamakan Desert over the past 25 years. They also used the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Carbon Tracker, which models CO2 sources and sinks globally, to bolster their findings. The result, published on January 19th in the journal PNAS, show a long-term trend of expanding vegetation and rising CO2 uptake along the desert's edges that coincides both in time and space with the Great Green Wall. Over the study period, precipitation during the Taklamakan Desert's wet season from July to September was 2.5 times higher than it was in the dry season, averaging about 0.6 inches or 16 millimeters per month. Precipitation enhanced vegetation cover, greenness, and photosynthesis along the desert's margins, thereby lowering CO2 levels over the desert from 416 parts per million in the dry season to 413 parts per million in the wet season. Previous research indicated that the Taklamakan Desert may be a carbon sink, but those studies focused on CO2 that it absorbed by the desert's sand. They also suggested that sand is not a stable carbon sink under climate change, because rising temperatures can cause air in the sand to expand, which releases extra CO2. Based on the results of this study, the Taklamakan Desert, although only around its rim, represents the first successful model demonstrating the possibility of transforming a desert into a carbon sink, Young said. The Great Green Wall's potential to slow desertification remains unclear, but its role as a carbon sink may serve as a valuable model for other desert regions, he added. To everybody involved with the production of the Great Green Wall in China, a massive, massive forest operation that has planted 66 billion trees to date. Cheers. That's a lot of green. Becky asks, so the trees are growing in the desert or just outside? So the trees, they've been planting the trees all the way around the Taklamakan Desert. The Taklamakan Desert, again, is the size of the state of Montana. That's huge. And they have successfully enclosed this desert with a ring of trees. But more green is growing because the sand is now not as unstable. It's allowing for more greenery to pop up in those areas. So that's really neat, being able to turn back desertification like that. All right. Our next article is an obligatory cat article. You're welcome. I will copy and paste this article link in the chat if y'all want to check it out. Mountain lions gain protection under California's Endangered Species Act. This was published to The Guardian on February 13th. February 13th of 2026 by Sarah Braun. More than 1,400 mountain lions across California are now protected by the state's Endangered Species Act, the state's Fish and Game Commission announced on Thursday. The commission unanimously voted to list 6 groups of Central Coast and Southern California mountain lions under the California Endangered Species Act, meaning the agency determined that they are likely to become extinct without intervention. The affected species can be found from the Bay Area all the way down to the Mexican border. This is a major milestone for a California icon, Tiffany Yap, Urban Wildlands Science Director at the Center for Biological Diversity, said in a statement. Mountain lions are a marvel, but too many across the Golden State are struggling in the diminished, fractured wild places where they live. The state isn't willing to stand back and watch our precious wildlife vanish forever. I'm celebrating this vote as a new chapter for pumas, and I hold so much hope for their future. The new protections provide a legal mandate for state agencies to protect the felines, and also requires developments proposed in lion habitats to identify and minimize potential harms to the population, with added precautions including more wildlife crossings, road improvements, and strong rat poison restrictions. There are already several measures anticipated to help the struggling population, including a huge wildlife crossing across the 101 freeway. These particular groups of mountain lions are especially vulnerable due to increasing isolation exacerbated by the loss of habitat, conservationists said. They also face deadly risks in their day-to-day movement, such as car strikes, rat poison, and disease. Ahead of the vote, opponents of the endangered species designation, including the California Farm Bureau, the California Cattlemen's Association, and the California Deer Association, voiced their concerns about the safety risks that the lions pose to people and livestock. Valerie Termini, acting director of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, acknowledged that mountain lions were polarizing animals, but that protection was the right decision. She said that the lions evoke strong and varied perceptions on how they should be managed, but the segment of the population we're talking about today is clearly at risk from distinct threats. It may seem odd that we want to say good news as an animal going on the endangered species, an endangered species list, or being protected by the Endangered Species Act. But in this situation, it's an acknowledgement that this species is in need of assistance. And so these protections are a welcome way to help the population. So to everybody in California involved with putting mountain lions on the California Endangered Species Act list so that they can be helped to improve their numbers in the wild, cheers. From our article about the trees, producer Donna said, I'm curious to see the longevity. It sounds like a great idea, but how many of them survive 25 or more years? It's an awesome idea. I hope it works. I'm not quite sure what kinds of trees they're planting, but I would hope that it's something that's going to live a while. And hopefully it can help curb some of the vilification. Yes, that one in response to the mountain lion article. Hopefully, producer Donna said, hopefully the being added to the Endangered Species Act can curb some of the vilification of mountain lions. Yeah. All right. We are now in to Wholesome Notes, Category 4. And we've got 2 articles here. I'll warn you right now to get your tissues, because the last article is an I'm not crying, you're crying article, as per producer Donna. So make sure you have your tissues ready. But first, we're going to start with an article that we called Home Built Heroics. And I will copy and paste this into the chat if y'all want to check it out. Teen brothers build a Disney-inspired ride in family basement. This was published to Popular Science on February 13th of 2026 by Laura Kinnery. When 12-year-old Matteo Mucchetti mapped out an amusement-style attraction that he wanted to create in his family's basement and then showed it to his older brother Nico, the high school sophomore was immediately sold. This is amazing, said Nico. Let's make it. Matteo had sketched on paper a top-down view of a multi-room space in Bear, Delaware, where they live. Not only did it chart the overall path of what would become a Disney-style dark ride, but it also highlighted the placement of the ride's individual story scenes. Nico, a high school sophomore, then helped bring Matteo's vision to life. It wasn't easy, but the brothers worked together tirelessly over 7 months. While Matteo took on the role of artistic director, coming up with the overall vision and then helping to plan, build, design, and paint the attraction, Nico played the role of tech guy and animator. He used the Arduino IDE, an open-source electronics platform, for creating interactive projects to write most of the attraction's coding from scratch. This included codes for controlling the ride vehicle, as well as to trigger moments like the opening and closing of 2 specially built doors placed along its track. They named their attraction Big Hero 7, after the 2014 Disney animated movie Big Hero 6, which served as the ride's inspiration. In the latter, a young robotics prodigy and his healthcare robot, Baymax, form a superhero team to combat crime. Big Hero 7 is a continuation of Big Hero 6, Matteo tells Popular Science. In our story, you are becoming the team's 7th member. Nico and Matteo then opened their ride to friends and family in the fall of 2025. The attraction began in a small pre-show area featuring portraits of Big Hero 6 characters, as well as tools that appeared in the film, adorning the walls. In a nearby corner sat an animatronic Baymax that Matteo and Nico had crafted on their own 3D printer. The robot served as the ride's narrator and let people in on its theme, which was to stop a factory of evil robots known as Fire, flame-throwing and intelligent robot entrepreneurs, from destroying San Francisco, a futuristic mashup of San Francisco and Tokyo. From there, riders boarded an autonomous ride vehicle, meaning it operates without human intervention. The boys had built it to resemble a helmet worn by the movie's main character, Hiro Hamada. Mateo even took a hammer to its exterior, which was made of wood, to make it look distressed. It could fit one rider at a time. Maybe two, says Mateo, but we didn't want to risk it. From the pre-show area, the vehicle traveled through a narrow passage between an open door and a wall, and then entered a restricted area, which was basically a darkened space with flashing lights and ominous music, divided by a curtain. This gave the ride something to circle around, and increased the length of the track itself, says Nico. It then continued through an automated door and past the Mucchetti's small home theater room where surveillance footage of robots displayed on the screen, and a table with some ride-related thematic elements like a small robot head and a voltage generator. Finally, says Nico, riders thought they were going through a small doorway, but then it closed off in front of them. The vehicle then turned and entered the final room instead. This is where riders encountered Baxter, a towering 6.5-foot tall animatronic robot that the boys made and named after Tony Baxter, a famous Disney Imagineer. At one point, the robot appears to throw a fireball over the ride vehicle. I especially like this part, says Mateo, because the sound travels through the room. The attraction then concluded in the same space where it started, lasting 5 to 6 minutes in total. Although the brothers initially wanted the ride vehicle to navigate itself without a track, they decided to switch to a line-following system, basically a marked path that an autonomous vehicle can follow, for ease and affordability. They then made a track out of reflective metallic tape and laid it out in a shape resembling a distorted infinity symbol. Nico then equipped the ride vehicle with a Raspberry Pi Pico, a type of microcontroller used for real-time tasks, to control its two motors and placed a line sensor at its front. The sensor reads the small reflective line on the ground, he says, using infrared light, and that tells the vehicle where to go based on a controlled algorithm. The brothers also placed additional strips of reflective tape perpendicular to the line itself and equipped them with transmitters. When the sensor activated a transmitter, it would send a signal to what they called the booth, which was essentially a central computer area, that would trigger one of the attraction's lights or sounds. This is insanity. These two brothers built an amusement park ride in their basement. To create Baxter, they employed Unity, a game design tool used for creating 2D and 3D games. He has a wood skeleton, and then all the exterior bits are 3D printed and have been painted and distressed as necessary, says Nico. Each of Baxter's 10 moving joints are powered by their own servo motor, a specialized motor that allows its user to precisely control how much something moves, including his head, arms, and his shoulder joints. The boys then used Batango, a user-friendly animatronic animation software, to program his movements. It took us nearly 3 months to create him. But let me tell you, the end result is wild. There's a picture of Baxter. Holy crap. I would say we did our best to make the ride entirely understandable if you have no Big Hero 6 experience, says Nico. Still, those who'd seen the movie may have noticed little tributes to it, including Baymax and the appearance of San Francisco. Mateo also hid several Easter eggs along the ride, including a miniature Baxter robot on the top of San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. After they finished building the ride in the fall of 2025, the boys kept it up for 2 more months, from the beginning of October until after Christmas, although some souvenirs, such as Baxter, remain. They then reopened the space for their parents' use. About 100 people rode it in total, and the brothers used the attraction as a food drive, collecting enough donations to fill up their family's SUV. When people finished the ride, I think they were in shock, says Mateo. They were just kind of like, wow, this is incredible. Nico and Mateo say they'd love to work together again on another project if they can find the time. I think it would be a lot better because we have a lot more experience with this type of thing now, says Nico. But I can see Mom eyeing me and wondering if she's ever going to have her basement back. That is amazing. These are kids. These are kids who made an amusement park ride in their basement. And then they used it to do a food drive. That is so cool. To Mateo and Nico Mucchetti for building Big Hero 7, an attraction in their basement, and using it to host a food drive. Cheers. Producer Donna said, I love all the open source resources they used. Yeah, they used a ton of open source resources. Everyone can access these things. When I was in engineering school, I was using Raspberry Pis to program all sorts of different things. I also programmed a robot to run around on a track, similar to how they did. So this is really neat. Just really awesome of these two to build this and then use it for something cool like a food drive. That's awesome. All right, it's time for our last article of the night, and this one is an I'm not crying, you're crying article. So get your tissues ready. I will copy and paste this one in the chat if you'll want to check it out. After ICE took these pets' owners, this Minneapolis shelter is keeping them safe. The goal is always reunification. This was published at goodgoodgood.co on February 12th of 2026 by Cameron Baker. In late January, a Minneapolis-based animal shelter, The Bond Between, shared a photo of a large, wrinkly-faced gray dog named Chapo. This is Chapo. His whole world was changed in an instant. Recently, his dad was deported by ICE, leaving Chapo confused, scared, and displaced. There was no time to prepare, no chance to explain, just absence, the organization wrote. Chapo's story is, unfortunately, not unique, as thousands of United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents who are a part of Operation Metro Surge continue to sweep across Minnesota and detain thousands. The beloved pets of countless people have been left confused and alone. The Bond Between has long offered a unique model, including respite fostering and no judgment surrendering, which allows people in crisis to either give up their furry friends for adoption or place them in a temporary foster home until they are able to be reunited. Chapo stayed with his owner's friend and is now in a foster home where he can adjust to his new circumstances. But, as The Bond Between shared, he's one of the lucky ones. They have reported a serious uptick in people seeking the nonprofit services, and they have also been helping people proactively set up emergency plans for what to do in the event their family is impacted by ICE. We know that behind every request for help is love, fear, and someone doing the best they can in an impossible moment. We will keep showing up to protect those bonds, to offer safe landing places, and to stand with our community when it matters most. The organization shared on social media this week. The goal, if possible, is always reunification because no one should have to choose between their own safety and the animal they love. The organization recommends that people who are concerned they might be arrested or detained by ICE identify a trusted loved one or a community member who could temporarily care for a pet if something unexpected happens. This also includes sharing important information and resources, like feeding routines, veterinary needs, and other emergency contact information. And then, the Bond Between can step in when local animal welfare support is needed, like setting up a longer-term respite foster or surrendering a pet altogether. In addition to supporting these emergency plans, the organization has been packing and distributing care kits for pets of people who are too afraid to leave home amid ICE's occupation of the area. Volunteers, including young students, have shown up in spades to help package these kits for their vulnerable neighbors. What is happening to our community is horrific and tragic. There aren't words to describe what is going on. Throughout all the suffering and tragedy, there have been moments of beauty, moments of good. The organization shared after students came to pack emergency kits. These kids spent their afternoon putting together packets of food, treats, and toys, which will be available for pickup and distribution from our Minneapolis location. There are around 150 dog packets and over 60 cat packets. just from one afternoon of teens coming together for their community, the bond between shared on social media. Our community is suffering, but it's not broken. Our community is strong, they continued. We are continuing to look out for one another, looking out for our neighbors, protecting our neighbors. And people across the country have also been stepping up to support the bond between financially. In late January, the organization shared on a social media that it had received monetary and supply donations from 11 countries and all 50 states. This is a worldwide movement, a movement sparked by the unthinkable, a movement powered by love, a movement sustained by everyday people that want the same thing: to help. To help keep our neighbors safe and cared for, the organization wrote. Because of you, animals will receive care, families will receive supplies, and more pets will get to stay with their humans. And as for the animals who are currently separated from their loved ones, they're in good hands too. The silver lining is that the community really does seem to be stepping up for these animals, and for the people that have had their rights stripped away from them. Rachel Morose, executive director of the Bond Between, told NPR News. I just want to make the point that the animals we're seeing have been very well cared for and loved. They are family members. Nobody meant to abandon them. It's the situation that's causing them to be displaced. To everybody at the Bond Between, to everybody that has supported the Bond Between, and to all the families that are being affected, cheers, and wishing the best for everyone. All right. Yeah, I got a little misty-eyed there. I'm not crying. You're crying? Producer Donna says, still nailed me, and I knew it was coming. Well, that's going to do it for our show for tonight. Thank you all so much for tuning in or catching the replay on the Knicks News YouTube page. Again, we're live every Sunday, and our next episode is going to be on February 22nd, 2026. We encourage participation, so by all means, if you feel inclined, you can message or post suggestions for news brews, shoutouts, news quotes, and especially good news articles that we can present on future episodes. If you send a bunch of articles, we try to have you spread them out across our 4 major categories, which again were science and technology, health and medicine, flora and fauna, aka plants and animals, and wholesome notes, the really nice, touchy-feely articles we like to end on. You can message us on Facebook or Instagram, or email us at somebudgetstudios@gmail.com. Links are all in the description of the video. Feel free to like, subscribe, or comment on all of our content across all our platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, to get good news and joy out into all the algorithms. Please no SEO improvement. Advertisements are not interested. Y'all continue to grow Knicks News, and I can't thank you all enough for it. We continue to spread good news. A lot of these sites that we look at and we get these articles from are doing their best to just get that good news out there, and we are happy to be a part of that system. So, and it's thanks to all of you that we continue to be. So, as always, thank you again. I love you all. Have a great night, and I will play us out.